What's up, you beautiful people? Welcome to episode 50 of the Thursday Night Grind, where every Thursday night I come on YouTube and I sharpen something on the bench. And this one's fun because I've been wondering, like, how long do I need to do this to get to not see anything new anymore? And molding snips was a new one. So I look forward to diving into that with you and to go over my thought process on how I did them. The other thing that's really cool to me is that the sharpening business, well, it is a sweet side hustle that generates revenue and there's all sorts of benefits for that. One of the primary motivators for me and some other people to get into this is to serve the community. And this is one where the customer had used me before and he bought this new tool and he was like, yo, like, it's not great. Like, I could buy a new blade, but it's brand new anyway. Like, could you take a look at it? And this is an opportunity for me to provide to my community, right? So I really dig that. And if this sort of thing, like sharpening, generating revenue, becoming, a valuable contribution to your community is a message that sort of resonates with you, it's like, yeah, like that's something I aspire for. Check out the Guild of Professional Sharpeners, because that is where we're building a community of people who are doing the same thing. And what's great about the future that we live in is with the internet, we can all do this together in our own communities, grow fast and learn from each other, but also like not compete with each other, right? Like that's something that is really great with this future that we live in. So you can learn more about that at guildofsharpeners.org. And there's a lot going on there. Now, one other thing that really stood out to me this week was a conversation that I had with two guys, each just getting started out. And the first one was largely motivated by this idea of becoming, part of the community and offering a service to the community. But another thing that he shared, that the other person shared as well, was that a lot of times we can see the vision, like the end product. Like Eric used the analogy of a canvas. He can look at a blank canvas and like see what it's going to look like. The issue is knowing which paint to use and what brush to pick up, right? Like those minute details, the first step to get to the long end of the journey. And that's where having a community around you can be really helpful. And one other aspect that the community brings is what I'm trying to get in the habit of is a monthly call. And we'll be going on Zoom tomorrow night and everybody's invited. And that's where we can all share where we're at in the journey and learn from each other. And say like, yo, like I know where I want to get, like here's where I'm at. What's the next thing? And we can weigh in and be like, yo, here's the next, did this with Zach too. Like here's the next 3 things I need you to do to get where you're trying to go. So anyway, lots there. It's awesome. And if you are interested in that, please check out the Guild of Professional Sharpeners. You can learn more at guildofsharpeners.org. There's a link in the description. And also, this is a special time, and I really encourage you. I got something in the works, and I'm trying to make happen at the end of the month. I would invite you to get onto my email list, and the best way to do that is to download the 21 Reasons to Start a Sharpening Business. You'll find the link to that in the description as well, and that will put you on my my weekly newsletter. And it is only the subscribers to that newsletter that are going to learn about what I'm trying to do right now. So anyway, do that. And without further ado, let's go to the bench and check out this pair of molding snips. First thing I want to do with these is just really orient myself and you to what's going on with these molding snips. I had to look them up. I have not done these before. Some things, first off, here's the design intent. The owner, and corresponding with the owner, said that they were going to be using it for shoe molding, pine. This isn't shoe molding, but it is pine, and it's of a comparable size. So I took a few snips already, but it is, you got it. I'm using the bench here to lean into it. It cuts, right? That's the design intent, and then some, you can set angles and all that with here. So it's kind of a cool thing. Kind of want one now. But some things that are catching my eye. First off is when I close it and then sight up here, up to the light, and look for a gap. There is a bit of a gap here at the tip to about there. If you squeeze really hard, you can kind of make that gap go away, but it's not closing all the way up here. So if you had some large molding, it might not do a great job cutting here at the end. It is cutting down here, And there's also a little channel that the blade goes into. And then what I'm seeing here is like when you do that and then you squeeze, you're really just pressing the edge into that groove. And that's going to be hard on the edge. So what that makes me think of is I want this edge to be highly refined and highly durable and not a very small bevel because I don't want it to fold over. And some other things that caught my eye. When I close the, with the material in here and then I open it up, the bevel's cut a little further back on the blade. So I don't need to be too worried about, as long as I match that cut line on the bevel, I'm fine. I don't need to worry about going any further back. I did notice there is a burr built up here. You hear that? So the edge has already folded over. So that's another indicator, like not a super shallow bevel and highly refined is what we want on this. And I think there was one other thing. Here there might be more, but one other thing is that I'm concerned about doing too much aggressive work because I really don't want to change the shape of that blade the way that it really needs. The blade needs to meet the anvil just right. It already doesn't, right? So there's a chance I could make it worse. You see that? I don't know if you're going to be able to see through there or not, but whatever. I'm not going to take the energy to hold it up to the light for you, but trust me on that. And okay, so I think that concludes the observations. And I'll do another cut for you here. So like you could put it here at a 45. Again, I'm going to lean into it a little bit. It's not terrible. I'm looking forward to seeing what it's like when it's better. So, so I don't want to remove a bunch of material. So I'm probably not going to take this to the 1x30. I do really want to maintain that straight edge profile. And so I'm leaning towards a jigged solution, which in my shop takes me to the Edge Pro or the Tormek. And both I think would be viable. I think for speed and efficiency balanced with quality of finish, I'm leaning towards the Tormek. So that I think is the way I'm going to go. I always reserve the option to change my opinion mid-grind, but the next step is to take these apart. There's a little screw here, a little spring in here. I anticipate I'm going to pop this out, pop that out, and then this. I don't know yet whether the blade will come off of the handle or whether that is all one integrated unit. But the next step, I'm going to take it apart and I'll check back in with you. The disassembly was straightforward. Nut and bolt, pulled them through here. This slides in there and then those line up. The spring that's right in there. The issue that I'm catching my eye now is the owner did say that the blades are replaceable, and there's a guide through here, which I think is what's holding the blade onto the handle. So the replacing the blade does not look particularly intuitive to me, and I suspect you need to punch that guide out, and then this blade slides out of the handle. There's a little catch in there. The cost of this tool is not a lot, and I imagine that most people will just buy a new one. But case in point, this is new, and that's not a great edge, and that is not totally abnormal. So the sharpening business is a viable prospect. Okay, let's get this set up on a sharpening jig. Jumping back into the voiceover, and this took a little bit, so I ran it up to double speed, and I think I can talk through it and we can all understand this as we go. So I'm setting up that knife clamp, making sure that the edge is parallel to the cutting edge. I'm using the guide to set the angle. I did check the angle in the guide before this. It was coming out to be around 30, and that's what I'm setting it to right here using the angle guide jig from the Tormek. Here I am painting the bevels with the Sharpie, and that is just to check where the angle comes out on both sides on this one. And remember, I wanted it to be a little bit steeper than it was. And I did notice that a burr was pushed up on one side, so I'm being deliberate to check both sides, because on one side I might just be catching the burr when I spin that wheel by hand. And I want to make sure that I get it certainly not any more shallow, a little steeper, but pretty close to where it was at. So here I'm just going to fine tune it, spin the wheel a little bit. That's me checking it out, not trying to show you anything there. And you'll notice that the handle interferes with the honing wheel on the Tormek, but that ain't no thing. Pop that baby off. I'm going to grade that stone to the coarse to get some work done kind of quickly. And just do a little check pass here now that I have set that up. Good, good. Check the other side. Tough there because of the water, right? Like you move the water and you end up taking this Sharpie off with your hand, but whatever. We can figure it out. Just being cautious. All right, so now we're actually getting into the sharpening. Let's do some work, focusing on making sure that we get a nice grind along the whole length of the blade, checking for a burr like we always do, making sure that burr goes along the whole length of the blade. And it did not, so we touch it up a little bit more. Hit up the other side. You got to make sure you push up a burr on the other side as well. Nice job. A little funny down there where the majority of the work gets done. So focus in on that a little bit. Also, remember we noticed that a little more material could be removed off of that side. Just because of the way the blade was flowing on the anvil. Here we are. We're going to grade that to the finer grit. Understanding that the more time you spend on the grader, the closer you get to that desired finish. A little small angle change of the camera for you to do the effectively a 1000 grit. A few more passes on either side here with what is effectively 1000 grit on the stone. Checking for a burr again, making sure we're getting up a burr. And my procedure is to make sure you're putting up a burr on either side. Spend enough time grinding so that you get the full effect of the 1000 grit on either side. And then just a couple light passes to try to make the burr as small as possible for the transition over to the leather wheel. I think that's what we're seeing right here, that nice light pass. Light pass. Let's take a look at the leather wheel. So here I am. The way I'm going to try to get the leather wheel to match the angle that was on the stone wheel is again by using the angle guide from the Tormek. I didn't make any changes to the angle guide, so that's all good. Now just fine tune it. Understanding you have to do this because the wheels are different diameters. And it takes a little bit of time doing the fine tune adjust on the handle there, which is outside of the camera scene. Now I'm painting it with the Sharpie again because I want to do a test here to make sure that the angle is close. Notice here the stone gets in the way on that side, and the stone I'm not going to go through the energy to remove. But I also acknowledge that the majority of the work of that tool is being done down towards the one end of it. So I'm not as concerned about removing the stone. What I ended up doing was just touching up the tip on that side on the leather wheel after I took it out of the jig. But the majority of that bevel was, here I'm just checking that my angle is good. I put a little bit of fresh paste on that wheel. There's not much I can do about getting that tip on this side, right? It's the stone. But I am noticing that the Sharpie was removed quite well. The edge is developing a nice glistening look. And it feels pretty sharp. So I think I might have done the touch up on the edge after. I almost didn't record the reassembly part, but one of the things that bothered me, and one of the reasons I started doing this channel, is that for other people that I would watch, whether sharpening, whatever, like they don't record a critical section. And then when I get to that section, like it takes me 5 times as long. And I'm like, what am I missing? So and it turns out there's a few good things. So check this out. I'm going to tighten this up here and be like, oh, something ain't right. And that's because I put the pin in the wrong way. The one side of that is square and one side is a little bit bigger diameter because there's a little flange on that nut. So let's take it all back apart, flip the pin around. Oh yeah, notice like it's not, oh man, like it's kind of a pain in the neck. Like it's spring loaded and like all right, I've got some needle nose pliers to help me out. So now we'll put it back in the correct way. I did put a little bit of that's white lithium grease on there. Probably not necessary. This isn't a high load or high use thing. It's not being used in a very dirty environment, but I just like lubrication. I think that it makes moving parts last longer and it's easy enough to do. So I put a little bit of lube on that pin. All right, so now we get it all good back together and I got it tightened up, maybe just a little bit too far. So when the spring doesn't push it open all the way, and then I back it off a little bit. And then, I think we're gonna do a cut test here. And then I discovered that I need to take it all back apart again. But anyway, here's the cut test. Hold on. Brought this back down at normal speed because this is pretty good. One thing I did notice is that the piece popped right off of there, right? So it still took a fair amount of pressure to do the cut, but I did notice a remarkably cleaner finish to the cut. And that first one that popped off was something that I did not recall happening the first time. Here I am just checking for a burr to make sure that pressure did not fold the edge over, and it did not. Let's do a little 3-finger test to feel for sharpness. Still feels sharp. And here I discover that, God dag nabbit, this locking thing needs to be in the other position when you reassemble it. And I just can't get it back around without taking it back apart. So let's just take it back apart. But that ain't no thing, so we'll just disassemble the tool again. We're starting to get pretty good at it, and then swap the locking mechanism around and put it back together. And that tool is better than new. Okay, so that's cool. I hope you got something out of watching that, how I did those. One other thing that has come up on a call I was on this week was how by watching stuff that we're not even ready to be sharpening for, we can pick up little tips and tricks. And I'm hoping that by like going through the analysis of just the things that I'm looking at when I'm working on something new, I'm hoping that that you can use that methodology as well. Because as you've seen years and, I think I'm 5 years in, like there's still some new stuff coming across the bench. So from when you're starting out to even after you've been at it for a while, you keep seeing new things, and it's, just good to see how other people look at new things that come across the bench. So I welcome your feedback. Please do that by leaving a comment down here in the video, and subscribe and thumbs up. Those things really help me out just to get a little exposure on the YouTubes, and they're no energy from you other than a click of the mouse. So I appreciate you in advance for doing that. Remember to check out the Guild of Professional Sharpeners at guildofsharpeners.org. And lastly, please remember that one of the best things you could do at the moment, if any of this sort of stuff interests you, is to get on my email list by downloading the 21 Reasons to Start a Sharpening Business. And that will put you into my weekly newsletter and get you on my email list. So thank you in advance for all of that. We are on the home stretch of 2020. I appreciate you being here, and I will see you next Thursday night.